Ladies and gentlemen, respect is never given. It's earned. And it's not earned through shouting the loudest, proving the most, or chasing approval. It's earned through boundaries, the invisible lines that say, "This is who I am, and this is what I will not allow." The truth is, people don't respect what you say, they respect what you tolerate. And if you've been overlooked, dismissed, or undervalued, it's not because you're not enough. It's because your boundaries aren't strong enough. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 boundaries that make men stop, listen, and respect you without question. Imagine walking into a room where everyone seems louder, stronger, more confident than you. In that moment, you feel the pull to shrink, to soften yourself, to blend into the background so you don't disrupt anyone. But here's the truth. The respect you crave will never come from disappearing. It comes from showing people, not just through words but through consistent action, what you will and will not allow in your life. Boundaries are not walls, they're the framework that communicates your value. When you live without them, people take from you endlessly. When you set them with clarity and strength, you teach others how to treat you. And there are 5 boundaries that will always earn a man's respect. 5 non-negotiables that, when you hold them firmly, make others stand taller in your presence. The first boundary is time. Time is the currency of your life, and when you give it away too freely, you send a silent message that it doesn't hold much worth. If you're always available, always answering every call, always rearranging your schedule for someone else, you are teaching others that your priorities come last. Respect comes when you guard your time fiercely. When you say, "I can't meet tonight, but I'm available tomorrow at 3. You communicate that your schedule matters. This is not arrogance, it is self-value. Think about the men you respect most. They don't waste their hours on trivialities. They structure their day, they move with intention, and when you interact with them, you can feel that their time has weight. Your life is no different. When you start respecting your own hours, others will begin to respect them too. The second boundary is language. Words hold power. They shape how people perceive you. If you allow disrespectful words, subtle insults, or dismissive tones to pass unchecked, you silently agree to them. Every time you laugh off a cutting joke, you tell the other person, "It's okay to minimize me," but when you calmly, firmly say, "That doesn't work for me," or "I don't find that funny," you shift the dynamic. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to raise your voice. You simply need to make it clear that your dignity is not negotiable. And here's the thing, men respect clarity. They respect someone who draws a clear line in the sand without apology. Your boundary around language signals that you know your worth, and that you won't let words chip away at it. The third boundary is energy. Pay attention to how drained or uplifted you feel after spending time with someone. Respect is not just about what's said out loud. It's also about how people affect your inner state. If you allow people who constantly criticize, gossip, or complain to camp out in your life, you are depleting your own energy reserves. And when you run low, you have nothing left to give to the people who truly matter. Respect yourself enough to filter your circle. This doesn't mean you need to cut everyone out. It means you are intentional about who gets the privilege of your closeness. When you pull back from toxic energy and lean toward people who challenge you, inspire you, and elevate your thinking, you set an energetic standard. Others will notice it. They may not articulate it, but they'll feel it. That when they're around you, they need to bring their best selves forward. The fourth boundary is body. Your physical presence is sacred. How you carry yourself teaches others how to treat you. If you slouch, avoid eye contact, or shrink back in conversations, you are sending signals of submission. But when you stand tall, shoulders back, voice steady, you project an unspoken boundary. I am not to be diminished. Beyond posture, this also means deciding who gets physical access to you. Too often, people allow unwanted touches, uncomfortable proximity, or casual invasions of space because they don't want to appear rude. But your body is yours. When you step back, when you place a hand up and say, "I don't like that," you are teaching respect on a primal level. Men, in particular, understand and respond to physical boundaries. The way you inhabit your space speaks louder than words ever could. The fifth boundary is values. At the core of who you are live the principles you refuse to compromise. This is the deepest boundary of all, because it shapes every other. If you don't know your values, you will bend and break under pressure. You will trade your peace for approval. But when you live in alignment with what you believe, whether that's integrity, honesty, discipline, or faith, you become unshakable. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect you because you are consistent, and consistency builds trust. A man might challenge your opinion, but if he sees that you stand firm, that you don't change your tune depending on who's in the room, he will respect you, even in disagreement. Values are the ultimate boundary because they say, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. You can come closer, but you cannot cross this line. Respect isn't demanded with anger or forced through control. It's earned through the quiet strength of boundaries held with conviction. Every time you say no when you mean no, every time you protect your time, every time you correct disrespectful words, every time you manage your energy, every time you embody your values, you are building a reputation that speaks before you do. People may not always like your boundaries, but they will respect them. And in that respect, you will find the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to beg. It simply exists, steady and unshakable, because you chose to honor yourself first. Now let's go deeper. Because understanding boundaries in theory is one thing, but living them every single day is where the true challenge lies. When you start enforcing these lines, you'll notice resistance. People who once benefited from your lack of boundaries may push back. They might accuse you of being selfish, difficult, or even cold. But remember this, every boundary you enforce is a mirror. It reflects back to others the areas in their own life where they've settled, where they've allowed disrespect, where they've tolerated what should never have been tolerated. Your firmness might make them uncomfortable, but discomfort is not cruelty. Discomfort is the birthplace of growth, for you and for them. Think about your time again. When you say yes to every demand, you're not being generous, you're being depleted. Generosity has power when it comes from overflow, not exhaustion. Imagine a man who runs his business by giving away all his resources for free. At first, everyone celebrates his generosity, but soon he has nothing left. His employees can't be paid, his operations collapse, and he has no ability to sustain the very people he tried to serve. That's what happens when you live without a time boundary. By saying no, by creating structure, you actually allow yourself to show up more fully when you choose to say yes. Respect grows when people see that your time has weight because it forces them to evaluate how they're using their own. And when it comes to language, the boundary is not just about defending yourself from disrespect. It's also about modeling respect in the way you speak. People pay attention to how you talk about others, even when those others aren't present. If you constantly use sarcasm, gossip, or belittling language, you communicate that you tolerate that environment. But when your words are intentional, when you choose to speak with clarity, kindness, and conviction, people recalibrate in your presence. You're not just asking them to respect you. You're showing them what respect looks like. And respect is magnetic. It draws people toward you because they know they'll never have to wonder where they stand. Your words become a contract, and the consistency of honoring that contract builds authority. Energy boundaries might be the hardest to maintain because they often involve letting go of long-standing relationships. It's not easy to distance yourself from people you've known for years, even when you know they drain you. Loyalty can blind you to the damage being done, but loyalty without discernment is self-betrayal. You cannot grow if you remain anchored to people who are committed to staying the same. Ask yourself, after spending time with this person, do I feel expanded or diminished? Do I feel closer to the person I want to become, or further away? Respecting your energy means you stop negotiating with the truth. You stop making excuses for those who consistently bring chaos into your life. And as hard as it is, the moment you pull back, you create space for the right people to step in. People who challenge you to rise higher, not sink lower. Now think about your body again, because this is not just about physical posture or personal space. It's also about how you treat your body when no one is watching. Do you respect it with rest, movement, nourishment? Or do you push it to exhaustion, ignore its signals, and then expect others to treat it as sacred when you haven't? People notice. The way you carry yourself is not just external. It's a reflection of the choices you make when the world isn't looking. A man respects someone who respects themselves enough to maintain their body, not out of vanity, but out of discipline. Discipline is attractive because it reveals self-control. When you walk into a room with shoulders back, head held high, and energy that radiates vitality, you communicate without words. I take myself seriously. I am not careless with myself, and neither should you be. And values. This is where everything converges. Your values are tested in the small moments, not just the big ones. It's easy to talk about integrity when nothing is at stake, but what about when lying would get you ahead? It's easy to preach about loyalty until honoring it costs you something. Men respect consistency in values because it is rare. Too many people mold themselves to fit the situation, shifting their beliefs based on who's in the room. But when you remain unshaken, when your actions match your words, you stand out. Think of the men in history who are remembered not just for what they achieved, but for what they refused to compromise. They drew lines, and those lines became their legacy. Your values are your compass. Without them, you drift. With them, you anchor. And people, whether they admit it or not, admire the person who cannot be bought, who cannot be swayed, who knows exactly who they are and lives by it. There's another layer to these boundaries that must be understood. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about inviting the right people closer. When you set clear boundaries, you filter out those who only wanted to take advantage, leaving space for relationships built on mutual respect. Imagine building a fortress, not with walls so high that no one can enter, but with gates that open only for those who prove they belong. That's what boundaries create. They're not barriers to connection, they're protectors of it. Without them, every relationship becomes a transaction where you're left depleted. With them, every relationship becomes an exchange where both people rise. And let's not ignore the role of silence. Silence itself can be a boundary. You don't always need to defend, explain, or justify your choices. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect is no response at all. Just distance. Men respect those who do not feel the need to constantly prove their worth. There's strength in holding your tongue when words would only cheapen the moment. There's authority in letting your actions do the talking. Silence can be louder than shouting, and when you use it with intention, it becomes one of your strongest boundaries. Another thing to consider is consistency. Boundaries lose their power when they shift with your mood. If you say you don't tolerate lateness but constantly excuse it, your words mean nothing. If you say you value honesty, but keep rewarding dishonesty with your attention, you undercut your own standard. Boundaries are not about occasional enforcement, they're about daily reinforcement. The people around you are always testing, consciously or unconsciously, whether your lines are real. Every time you reinforce them, you solidify respect. Every time you bend them for convenience, you erode it. Respect grows from predictability, not in a rigid way, but in a reliable one. People respect what they can count on, and when they can count on your boundaries, they count on you. And let's talk about fear, because fear is often what keeps people from setting boundaries. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. But boundaries don't eliminate fear. They teach you to act in spite of it. The first time you say no, your voice may shake. The first time you walk away from a disrespectful relationship, you may feel guilt. The first time you demand respect for your time, you may feel selfish. But that fear is the threshold. On the other side of it is freedom. On the other side of it is respect. Every great leader, every respected man or woman, had to confront the fear of being disliked in order to stand firm in their boundaries. You are no different. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else, your dignity, your peace, your worth, is more important. Over time, you'll notice a transformation. Boundaries that once felt uncomfortable will become natural. Saying no will no longer trigger guilt but confidence. Correcting disrespect will no longer feel confrontational but necessary. Protecting your energy will no longer feel like loss but like gain. And as you live this way, men will respect you not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Respect isn't forced, it's inspired. It's what people feel when they encounter someone who is unshakable in their standards, yet open in their heart. It's what they give to someone who teaches them, through presence and action, what it means to value oneself. Would you like me to keep expanding this speech even further into another 1,000 words? So it turns into a long-form keynote-style talk. Respect isn't forced, it's inspired. It's what people feel when they encounter someone who is unshakable in their standards, yet open in their heart. It's what they give to someone who teaches them, through presence and action, what it means to value oneself. And the more you live this way, the more you realize that respect is not just about what others give you. It's about what you give yourself each day. When you wake up and choose to honor your time, your energy, your body, your language, and your values, you're declaring to the world, I matter. That declaration becomes the compass that guides every interaction. And here's the thing, when people sense that you honor yourself, they instinctively calibrate their behavior. They show up differently around you, because your boundaries set the tone. Think about a king or a leader. They don't walk into a room demanding respect. Their presence demands it, because they live by rules that others cannot ignore. You have that same potential, but it requires discipline. Discipline to say no when it's easier to say yes. Discipline to hold the line when you're tempted to bend. Discipline to keep your standards even when people criticize them. Discipline is the bridge between intention and respect. Everyone can talk about boundaries, but only those who are disciplined enough to enforce them consistently earn the reputation of being unshakable. And reputation is powerful. Long before you open your mouth, people have already decided how to treat you based on the energy you project and the standards you enforce. Discipline builds that reputation brick by brick, choice by choice. There will be moments when you question yourself. You'll wonder if you're being too rigid, too hard, too distant. And that's natural because we're wired to crave belonging. But understand this, true belonging never comes from shrinking yourself. It comes from standing firm in who you are and allowing the right people to meet you there. The wrong people will always call your boundaries harsh because your standards expose their lack of them. Don't confuse their discomfort with your mistake. The fact that they push back is proof that your boundaries are doing their job. Respect is not about pleasing everyone, it's about holding yourself to a standard so high that others can't help but notice. Now, consider how boundaries influence leadership. A man who cannot enforce his own boundaries cannot lead. He becomes a people pleaser, swayed by every opinion, manipulated by every demand. But a man who lives by his boundaries becomes immovable. He may bend to listen, he may adapt when wisdom calls for it, but he does not crumble under pressure, and that steadiness is what others respect. People follow strength, not weakness. They follow clarity, not confusion. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you give others a reason to believe in you. Boundaries are the foundation of that strength. Without them, you are like a house with no frame. Impressive in appearance maybe, but one storm and you collapse. And let's talk about presence. Presence is one of the most underrated aspects of respect, and it ties directly into your boundaries. When you're in a conversation, are you fully there? Or are you distracted, scrolling on your phone, half listening, giving fragments of your attention? Respect is a two-way street. If you want men to respect you, you must respect the moment you share with them. Presence communicates value. It says, you matter enough for me to give my full focus. But here's the paradox. When you live with strong boundaries, you can be fully present because you're not overextended. You've said no to distractions, no to unnecessary commitments, no to people who drain you. That frees you to show up with intensity and depth where it truly matters. And when you show up that way, people can't help but respect it. Boundaries also shape the way you handle conflict. Conflict is inevitable. Misunderstandings happen, differences of opinion arise, tensions flare. But respect is built in how you navigate those moments. If you explode with anger, you lose credibility. If you avoid the issue altogether, you lose authority. But if you stand firm, calm, and clear, you communicate strength. I won't be disrespected, but I also won't disrespect you. That balance is rare. Most people lean too far in one direction. They either avoid or attack. Boundaries allow you to stand in the middle, grounded and steady. And when you can do that, Even those who disagree with you will walk away with respect. Think, too, about boundaries with yourself. It's easy to focus on how others treat you, but the deepest respect begins within. Do you respect your own commitments? Do you keep the promises you make to yourself? When you say you'll wake up early, do you honor it? When you decide you'll work out, do you follow through? When you claim you'll stop tolerating something that hurts you, do you actually stop? Every time you break your own boundary, you weaken your inner respect. And when you don't respect yourself, others won't either. Self-respect is visible. It radiates in your choices, your words, your posture, your tone. If you want men to respect you, start by becoming the kind of person you respect. That inner alignment creates outer authority. Respect also comes from how you manage your emotions. Boundaries around emotions are crucial because they keep you from being controlled by external forces. If someone insults you and you immediately lash out, they control you. If someone ignores you and you spiral into insecurity, they control you. But if you hold emotional boundaries, you decide what affects you and what doesn't. You refuse to give others the power to dictate your state of mind. And that steadiness earns deep respect. Men admire those who are not easily rattled, who can take the hit without losing their balance. Emotional boundaries turn you into a fortress. Not impenetrable, but unshakable. Another layer is financial boundaries. Respect isn't only about words and posture, it's also about how you manage your resources. If you constantly overspend to impress others, or lend money you can't afford to lose, you teach people that you're careless with your stability. But when you handle your finances with wisdom, when you're generous but not foolish, disciplined but not stingy, you communicate responsibility. And responsibility earns respect. Money, like time, is a reflection of what you value. Protect it. Direct it. Use it with intention. The way you manage it tells others whether you respect yourself or not. And finally, there's the boundary of vision. Vision is the direction of your life. If you have no vision, no sense of where you're going, people will not take you seriously. But when you live with purpose, when your actions align with a bigger picture, people notice. Men respect those who walk with clarity because clarity is rare. Most drift, aimless, reacting to life instead of leading it. But when you hold the boundary that says, I will not waste my life on distractions, I will pursue what matters, you command attention. Vision gives weight to your boundaries. Because every no you say is not just about rejection. It's about protecting your yes to something greater. So understand this. Respect is not about demanding power over others. It's about power over yourself. When you govern your time, your words, your energy, your body, your values, your emotions, your finances, and your vision, you become a person who commands respect naturally. You don't chase it. You don't beg for it. You embody it. And men will always respect the one who respects themselves enough to stand tall, firm, and unwavering in a world that constantly tests their limits. But here's the deeper truth most people overlook. Respect is not about moments, it's about patterns. One moment of strength may get you noticed, but it's the consistency of your boundaries that earns lasting respect. Anyone can stand tall once, anyone can say no once, anyone can call out disrespect once. But what happens on the 100th time? When you're tired, when the pressure is heavy, when you fear losing relationships, opportunities, or approval, do you still hold the line? That's the test. Respect doesn't grow from isolated events, it grows from the daily rhythm of how you live. And when men see that you don't just speak about standards but actually embody them every single day, they begin to admire you in silence, even if they never say it out loud. Think about the people you respect most. Chances are, it isn't because of one grand gesture. It's because over time, they showed up with steadiness. You saw them refuse to compromise when it would have been easier to cave. You saw them stay composed under pressure. You saw them treat others with dignity, even when they had the power not to. And slowly, your respect deepened. That's how it works with you as well. Every day, people are watching, even if you don't realize it. They notice whether you enforce your boundaries or break them. They notice whether your yes means yes and your no means no. And those observations shape the level of respect they hold for you. There will also be times when holding your boundaries costs you. You may lose friendships. You may lose opportunities. You may even lose approval from people you once admired. But understand this, what you lose in the short term cannot compare to what you gain in the long term. Every person who leaves because of your boundaries is making space for someone who will honor them. Every opportunity you miss because you refuse to compromise is clearing the way for one that aligns with your values. Respect is not built on pleasing everyone. It's built on standing firm in what matters, even when it hurts. Men especially notice this. They respect someone who doesn't fold when things get tough, someone who doesn't barter their dignity for convenience. And you must also recognize that boundaries evolve. The boundaries that served you 5 years ago may not be the ones you need now. As you grow, your standards grow with you. What you tolerated at one stage of life may no longer align with the person you are becoming. That evolution is not weakness, it's strength. It shows that you are awake, that you are paying attention, that you are willing to adjust in order to rise higher. But while your boundaries may evolve, the principle behind them never changes: self-respect. Whether you're guarding your time, your energy, your values, or your vision, the foundation remains the same. You are declaring that you will not abandon yourself, no matter how the world shifts around you. Boundaries also teach people how to trust you. Think about it. If you say yes to everything, if you bend with every request, if you avoid conflict at every turn, people may like you, but they won't fully trust you. Why? Because they know you're not being honest with yourself. They know your yes doesn't always mean yes. But when you live with clear boundaries, people know exactly where you stand. They may not always agree, but they never doubt your authenticity. And authenticity breeds trust, and trust breeds respect. Men in particular have a sharp sense for authenticity. They may test you, push you, even challenge you, but beneath it all, what they're looking for is whether you mean what you say. When your boundaries prove that you do, you earn their respect, even if they never admit it outright. Consider how this plays out in leadership, in friendships, in family. A leader without boundaries becomes a servant to every demand, constantly pulled in 100 directions. A friend without boundaries becomes resentful, always giving but never replenished. A family member without boundaries becomes invisible, defined only by what others expect. But with boundaries, you change the dynamic. You lead with clarity. You give with joy because it comes from overflow, not obligation. You love with strength, not desperation. And in all of these areas, respect deepens because people see that your presence is a choice, not a compromise. Now let's look at the role of boundaries in ambition. Every dream, every goal, every vision requires protection. The world is full of distractions, endless entertainment, noise, criticism, temptations. If you don't set boundaries around your focus, you will lose it. And when you lose focus, you lose progress. Men respect those who are disciplined with their ambition, who are willing to sacrifice comfort for growth. When you say no to late nights because you're building something, when you decline distractions because you're chasing a higher vision, when you prioritize long-term success over short-term pleasure, you communicate strength. And strength, paired with consistency, commands respect. People might mock you in the moment, but later, when results speak, they will remember your boundaries and respect you for them. Boundaries also transform the way you handle rejection. Without boundaries, rejection feels like destruction. You take it personally, you crumble, you doubt your worth. But with boundaries, rejection becomes redirection. You understand that someone else's opinion or decision does not define your value. You understand that saying no to you is not always a reflection of who you are, but of where they are. And because your boundaries protect your self-worth, you don't beg for validation. You move forward. That resilience earns respect. Men respect someone who doesn't fall apart when faced with rejection, but instead rises stronger, sharper, more determined. Another important layer is the boundary of identity. The world will constantly try to label you, define you, put you in a box. If you allow it, you'll spend your life living someone else's story. But when you set boundaries around your identity, when you declare, "This is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is the life I choose," you take control of your narrative. And that self-definition is powerful. Men respect those who refuse to be defined by external forces, who live their truth unapologetically. Not recklessly, not arrogantly, but unapologetically. Because when you own your identity, you give others permission to do the same. And remember, this respect grows not only when you set boundaries for yourself but also when you respect the boundaries of others. It's easy to demand respect but harder to give it. But the two go hand in hand. If you dismiss other people's time, mock their values, trample over their energy, you undermine your own credibility. But when you honor their lines as much as your own, you show maturity. You show that you understand boundaries are not selfish. They are the foundation of healthy connection. And when men see that you not only protect yourself, but also respect others, they admire that balance. They see strength coupled with empathy, and that combination is rare. What's also important is the way boundaries influence legacy. Long after you're gone, people won't remember every detail of what you said. They won't remember every accomplishment or milestone. But they will remember how you carried yourself, the standards you lived by, the way you made them feel. Boundaries shape that memory. When people look back, they'll remember that you were someone who couldn't be swayed by pressure, someone who lived with dignity, someone who never compromised what mattered most. And that memory, that legacy, is the ultimate form of respect. So understand this: boundaries are not barriers to love, success, or connection. They are bridges to the right kind of love, the right kind of success, the right kind of connection. Without them, you will always be at the mercy of others' expectations. With them, you live with clarity, strength, and purpose. And when men encounter someone like that, they cannot help but respect them, because strength of that kind is rare, and rarity is always respected.